Welcome to the Early End. My name's Mark Machado, and I'm joined not as always, but frequently by the Doyen of Sri Lankan cricket, Nicholas Brooks. We are joining you live from a press box at Emirates Old Trafford, where we have been for day 3 of the first test between England and Sri Lanka. It wasn't the best day for Sri Lanka, but there were some positives. We'll talk about everything about today because there's a lot to talk about. Before we do that, I've got to remind you, firstly, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, then hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. We need your help to kind of grow our channel and all the other good stuff that comes with it. Leave a comment, leave a like, whatever you want to do. We'll answer your questions through this show as well once we get into it and talk about everything else that needs to be talked about. Also, I need to remind you of 2 other things. Firstly, if you come to the Lord's Test, or if you're just in London and you're a fan of Sri Lankan cricket, that we're doing meetups at the end of every day's play. We're not quite figured out what timings will be, but we will do. We'll sort that out by this time next week. We're at the Three Falcons pub, which is a few minutes walk away from Lord's. It's it's about a 5 minutes walk from Edgware Road. The District Line stop station, because there's like 3 Edgware Road stations, isn't there? It's not too far away from that. It's about 5 minutes walk away from the actual stadium. We'll be there after the game. It's free entry. There's going to be loads of special guests. We invite loads of people to come down. The food's great there. You can have a banging butter chicken and amazing biryani. We had it last week, didn't we, Nick? Actually, almost exactly a week ago. I'll post some pictures up about how good it looks and how good Nick looks eating it as well on our various socials. So come down, get involved. You can watch the cricket there as well. As I say, if you don't have a ticket, watch the last few overs. Stay there all day. Don't drink all day. Drink responsibly, but maybe have a couple of pints in the last over or 2 of the day. I don't know. And also join our WhatsApp channel as well. We're posting content through the day. Loads of pictures, loads of stuff. Join our WhatsApp channel. I'll leave a link for that there is a link for that in the description as well. It's not something that's going to keep popping up during the day, all day. You go and look at it as and when you want to look at it at the side. It doesn't give you notifications, so don't worry about any of that. We'd love you to come on board. And also, the other thing I should say is no one else can see your number. So I know how many people are in it, but I can't see who's in it, if that makes sense. I know Nick's in it as well, and my sister. Right, anyway, Nick, let's talk about what happened today. Let's kind of just start at the top and work our way through, because I think that sounds like the most logical way. And after that, we'll answer some questions. We've had questions on Twitter. If you're watching live, you can leave your questions below. We'll get to those as well. Nick, Sri Lanka start the day needing 4 wickets. You assume they're going to come out with lots of positive intent, looking really up for it, looking really positive. What did you make of their fielding in the first hour and a half? And their bowling as well in the first hour and a half of today's day's play.
Yeah, long old day, Marky. I mean, we started play at 11 and finished up at 7. And this morning feels like hours ago, but it was a really, really disappointing morning session from Sri Lanka's perspective. They were late coming out. The short leg fielder forgot his pads. And then first ball from Prabhat was flicked through mid-wicket. Angelo, I don't know why he's fielding there, didn't stop the ball. And it just felt like a really ominous start. He was moved instantly to the other side of the wicket. Prabhat bowled so that Asitha then could come and bowl from this bottom end, because he bowled the last over from the top end last night. Asitha came on and bowled 1 over, went for 10. Prabhat was back on in no time. Dhananjaya was leaving Atkinson singles out to deep point. The bowling was loose. It was all a bit lackluster. It didn't seem like they had any plans to try and get Jamie Smith out. There was a real lack of intensity. Asitha, who was absolutely superb yesterday, just seemed a bit all over the place today. For some reason, when Mark Wood came in, he was trying to bounce him out. It just felt like Sri Lanka had really let the game drift away from them in that session. I think the one bright spot was Dinesh Chandimal's keeping. He took 2 really excellent catches to get rid of Gus Atkinson first and then Jamie Smith. But you look at the lead, England racked up, 120 odd in the end.
Yeah.
And
it didn't need to be that high, did it? They needed to come out with a plan and they need to bring intensity to it. It's a fairly, in terms of batting, it's either fairly not great batting, English batting tail, or an inexperienced batters at the crease. And you kind of felt if they'd come out, turned the crank up, and put intensity onto the pitch and into their body language as well, they could have got England out for much fewer runs. And this game, we could be looking at a totally different game at this particular moment. So it was. I thought it was quite disappointing.
Really disappointing. And I think actually Sri Lanka will look back on this game and look at the 2 morning sessions that they've had on the first day and today as really, really damaging for their chances. And as you say, I think had they performed better in those 2 morning sessions, they could be in the box seat heading into day 4. I think as it worked out, actually, they wanted to get England out sooner, but then having to come out and bat for the last 15 minutes of that session was a bit of a nightmare result. I was hoping they'd take an early lunch. That didn't happen. And the last 15 minutes when Sri Lanka batted did not go well.
I think it'd be quite interesting if we did a bit of digging about how that happened. Why weren't they allowed to take an early lunch? What is the regulation there that they ended up having to bat? Was it 3 overs or 4 overs? Can't remember.
Yeah, something like that.
Then should we talk about what happened at that? Because again, we lost early wickets, and this is like, I mean, fool me once and all that, right? Effectively on this tour, they've batted 4 times if you include that warm-up game, and only 1 time in the second innings against Worcester, against England Lions in Worcester, were they not all, did the openers make any runs? This is becoming quite a big issue now, right?
Yeah, I mean, Nishan Madushka did all right in the warm-up, didn't he? And came into this match with a bit of confidence behind him, I would have thought. But 2 really ugly dismissals after wafting a wide outswinger from Woakes in the first innings. Today, he shouldered arms to a scrambled seam ball that just nipped back and splattered his stumps. It looked really ugly. And then a few balls later, Kusal was kind of caught on the crease to one from Gus Atkinson. I think all tour he's looked a bit uncertain to, those kind of balls pitching on a good length and, 4th, 5th stump line. He's sort of just prodding. And yeah, Sri Lanka 1 for 2, having been 6 for 3 in the first innings. And they go into lunch just with an absolute mountain to climb. It's hugely, hugely deflating first session. I mean, I think actually that was probably the worst I've felt about Sri Lanka's prospects at any point during the test. And I had a number of people during the lunch break wondering whether this match was going to be over today.
Yeah, it did feel at that point that it might be a struggle to get to tea. I think we need to talk about the batting and dwell on it a little bit more, because I think it's quite obvious next test that there's going to be changes. I can't see Kusal batting at 3 at this point. We need to talk about the fact that Chandimal got injured, but has now he's uninjured, but his was it his thumb, isn't it? Wasn't broken, so he's effectively said a night watchman. He's our last real batter at Kamindu. This is our last kind of batting pair at the moment, right? So it's unclear whether or not he'll be able to play the next test. Let's say he is meant to play the next test. I think it looks to me like there's going to be some quite heated discussions about dropping Madushka and Mendis and potentially Patton and Sadira coming in. I think there's also a situation where Chandimal's injured, where Mendis ends up batting, Kusal Mendis ends up batting down the order. I don't know what you kind of think about that. I know me and you are basically discussing all kind of things that could potentially happen to Sri Lankan cricket, and it's quite drastic. Some of our discussions quite dramatic, not drastic, quite dramatic. Some of the scenarios I asked Nick about. But I wonder if Chandimal can't play and they want to change things up at the top, if they end up pushing Kusal down and dropping Patham and Sadira in.
I think Patham Nissanka certainly comes in for that second test, whether it's for Nishan Madushka or Kusal Mendis. I think it's up in the air. I feel Madushka might be the fall guy from 2 ugly dismissals, but Mendis has clearly got issues against the new ball, and for him batting 3 in England looks like it's going to be a struggle. I mean, we had a great presser from Ian Bell at the end of the day, and he said, look, batting against the new ball in England's not easy, and it is going to be tough for these guys. But if Sri Lanka are going to get anything out of this tour, they can't keep getting themselves into positions where they're, football scores early in the innings, right? I think you need a bit of stability early on, because we've seen that the middle order and the lower order as well have batted really, really well in both innings. And clearly the danger period is when the ball is hard and it's swinging around, but you have to show a bit more application, better technique, and be able to get through that period, tough it out. I'd be shocked if Patham isn't batting somewhere in the top 3 at Lords.
Just if you're just joining us now, just to let you know, we are in one of the press boxes at Emirates Old Trafford, which is why we are both we're both in the same room, amazingly. Also why there is a light that I'm trying to block out with my shiny head, but then it makes me look shiny and nightmare. If you want to ask us questions, leave some comments below. I'm not sure if we get them, but try and leave a comment. As it stands, I can't see any, but please do ask us some questions about, even if you just want to know what we have for lunch, we can tell you that. I just keep this between us. The food here that they give us isn't great. It's not great. I said last night to Nick, I was like, when the IPL owners start to buy county championship teams, maybe some of them might be the food in the press box. But
what are you doing? We still want to be here for day 4.
Yeah, I do. I might have to clip that out when I put it on.
We're looking forward to getting to Lords.
Yeah, and the Oval. I'm sure the food's very good over there. So we go in for lunch, come back out, and Mark Wood comes out to play, and he is fast turning into an absolute nightmare for our batters, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think prior to him coming on, Dimuth and Angelo had mounted what looked like quite a promising partnership, right? And then first ball of Wood's spell, just that extra pace, it is bound to cause problems. Interested to know what some of you guys thought about Dimuth's dismissal, because we saw one replay, then they kind of hurriedly moved away from it, but I wasn't sure that it was out. There was definitely a spike on ultra edge, but it looked to me like there was a little gap between ball and bat. So interested to know if I'm seeing things, if I'm overtired after 3 days of cricket, or if anyone else agrees. Dimuth definitely hung around like he wasn't sure whether he'd hit it or not, but ultimately decided not to review. And yeah, again, then 3 wickets down, Sri Lanka are looking in trouble, and not long afterwards he gets a really nasty nip-backer to wrap Chandimal on the thumb. Chandimal leaves the field, with his hand shaking. It looked for all money like he'd broken his thumb, and he was whisked straight off to A&E for a scan. And yeah, at that stage things were looking really pretty ominous again, right? Yeah,
they were. Angelo, though, we need to talk about Angelo. I deliberately didn't mention him when we were talking about our bowling this morning, because I've never seen anything quite like it, right? Normally, if you're having a bad day in the field, you're kind of having a bad day. But I kind of realised that actually he wasn't having a bad day in the field. He's just not really particularly. He's lost a lot of his athleticism. Sadly, the injuries mean he can't quite run as quickly as he once used to. And as a fielder, to be perfectly honest about it and to be quite brutal about it, he's basically useless. And I don't really understand why they let him field as much as he does and don't bring on other players to field in his place. Why isn't he just perpetually getting a massage on the sideline? I don't think it's like at this stage we could even contemplate dropping him because of the resolve he shows with the bat. Right, I know in the first innings he didn't have a particularly great time, but today he was absolutely spectacular. It was like he was running. I wouldn't say running back the years, but actually with the bat, he's never kind of lost it in Test cricket. I mean, he still averages over 45. It's incredible, right, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was getting a bit of a hard time off everyone for his efforts in the field. He's not the quickest chasing the ball anymore. I wonder if he's not agile enough to field in the slips, because it looked like Sri Lanka was struggling to hide him. But he showed an incredible amount of resolve with the bat. He obviously still wants to be out there, and he's doing everything he can to win games for Sri Lanka. It's a really slow outfield here that's been bogged down with lots of rain, and I think he batted 145 balls and he only hit 3 boundaries. So he had to run a lot of 1s and 2s and quite a few 3s as well, actually. it was a really, really crucial innings that he played today. He showed he can still duck out the way of Mark Wood's 95 mile an hour bouncers. He looked really, really confident, didn't he, actually, from the moment he came out to bat. I don't think there were too many plays and misses. He hit Shoaib Bashir for 6. I mean, what was actually really impressive was, despite losing early wickets, Sri Lanka had a really clear plan against Bashir, and they were more aggressive against him than they were in the first innings. They obviously didn't want to let him bowl. And Ollie Pope actually pulled him out of the attack, didn't he, after he'd taken a bit of tap, which was nice to see, because, England's seamers, I don't think, want to be bowling long spells. Again, Angelo and DDS was, looking good together. DDS looked great again and was really unlucky that got one off Matt Potts, which kept low. Pretty short ball that, really, it was again a sign of that variable bounce of this pitch, kept really low and trapped him dead in front. And again, at that stage, you think Sri Lanka are 4 down with Chandimal in the hospital, effectively 5 down, and you think the game is as good as over. But this has been a twisty, turny test match, hasn't it? And gosh, Kaminda Mendes batted superbly today, didn't he, Marky?
Yeah, I thought again, right? Because I know he scored, 12 the first time around, and but he looked in good touch, and he is in good touch in this innings as well. I think the real game changer came about now, right? Because I think England felt like actually Matthews and Kamindu could bat for a long time together with that old ball. They kind of seen off Bashir. Realistically, Mark Wood, who's their kind of main gun bowler, is never going to bowl a ball with about 10 overs a day. Pulled up, injured, even though the incident I'm talking about, which is obviously England getting not a new ball, but a different, changing the ball, happened, and that kind of swung it, or gave the English bowlers a new weapon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think actually Matthews and Mendes were looking really untroubled prior to that ball change, and suddenly news filtered through that Chandimal was going to come back to bat, and from Sri Lanka having looked dead and buried throughout the day, suddenly the mood shifted. I think the tone of the innings changed. Certainly there were a few whispers going around the press box that Sri Lanka might still be alive in this game. And then, I mean, Ian Bell was hugely diplomatic about the ball change in the post end of day press conference. He said, look, the seam was in pretty bad shape. It does happen. The lights came on, the clouds rolled over. I'm paraphrasing here, by the way. But he said, it happens. You have to accept that in England, and all you want is consistency. But I think we have to say that looked like a shinier ball. And suddenly it was hooping around corners. There were 2 drop catches before Wokes got Matthews. And England was suddenly causing Sri Lanka a lot more problems once that ball was changed.
Look, I know this ball change has been really controversial on social media, right? And I agree. I don't think it's within the spirit of cricket, and it's not in the way Sri Lanka fans in general think England are going to play cricket. They don't think that they play, kind of pushing the boundaries and pushing the rules and the laws as far as they can take them. But actually, I think of everything that's happened in this test so far, that should be the biggest lesson for DDS and this team. And that's that England will do what it takes to get an advantage, and they will not let that intensity down. Sri Lanka tried to change the ball a couple of times. They asked the umpire when they were bowling, can we get a ball change? Can we get a ball change? Can we get a ball change? This ball's dead, seam. And I think they just weren't able to kind of push it through. Where England clearly have talked in the dressing room about how they manage their umpires, and how in a situation like this arises, they're gonna work it in this scenario where they get what they want, which was the ball change. It's not maybe, I think we can safely say England, whatever happens from now on in, Sri Lanka have morally won this series. That's definite. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if when Sri Lanka pack up and go, they're allowed to take, I don't know, maybe Old Trafford, maybe Lords, and rebuild it in Colombo, because morally, cricket is with Sri Lanka on this. But we're not here for moral victories, right? We're here for solid scoreboard victories. And England did what they did because they had to do it. And it doesn't matter if we like it or not. And it doesn't matter if we think it's, moral or not. They did it. It happened. They got wickets for it, right?
Yeah, and I think there's maybe a lesson for Sri Lanka to learn, that they asked for the ball change once and then sort of were maybe a bit too polite about it. Whereas we've seen England on numerous occasions will keep asking the umpires. And if the umpires agree to change the ball, it's in the rules of the game. It is what it is. I think it is something that the ICC have to look at, because it's not the first time we've seen a change of ball kind of look to affect a test match, right? It happened in the 5th test of the Ashes last year, where England pushed for a ball change on the last day of that series. They got a much shinier ball, and suddenly the complexion of the game changed. I think that if ball changes have to happen. Sometimes balls get bent out of shape, but I think you want to see one being replaced with something that looks pretty similar to the ball that's, but yeah.
So I actually think it's not necessarily about the ball change, right? Or asking for the ball change, or how many times you ask for it. It's about managing the umpires. Because actually, when you watch England, they're quite aggressive with the way they talk. Not aggressive is the word, but I suppose pushy with the umpires, right? We saw the umpire, the Jamie Smith stumps one, and the catch when it was a no ball, basically, right? Was the umpires kind of pushing back a little bit, right? Because you always never see those kind of no balls given where the wicketkeeper's too high up.
It was definitely that was unusual, but I think it's
But that's all part of the way England managed the umpires, right? When Nick first came to Sri Lanka, he was telling me he was struck by how charming and gorgeous the people were. I think our players, our boys, need to get out there and show the umpires some of that charm them. I don't know, maybe take the mutton rolls in the morning or whatever it is. And it's a little bit more than just showing them respect and being respectful to them. They need to build a relationship with them so that when they ask for things, the umpires give it to them, or at least the umpires kind of entertain it and it puts the idea in the umpire's head.
I think we should also say that while Sri Lanka fans will understandably feel upset about the ball change, the damage was pretty much done by that point, and they were already well behind in the game due to their own failings this morning and on the first morning of the test.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of us, though, might have been hoping that maybe we could just bat out 3 days. I mean, we all remember KJP in South Africa. Right, so after that happened, then Chandimal kind of breaks his thumb. He's away in hospital, and then wickets start to fall again. Angelo is out after the red ball, after the ball change. Millard looks good, but Joe Root gets him out after Mark Wood has to limp off, and then Chandimal comes back like an absolute hero.
Funny sort of end to the day. As you say, Milan was looking nice. It's hard to be critical of him because he went aerial to the spinners numerous times in the first innings to great effect. But maybe a bit of naivety there. I think there's something about game management to be said. It was nearing the end of the day. You really wanted Sri Lanka to take the game deep, right, to bat it out. And he has a bit of a hoik at root and gives an easy catch in the end. Chandimal really bravely comes back out with the help of some painkillers and finished the day by taking Bashir to the boundary with a sort of swipe over mid-wicket, which drew lots of laughs where we were sitting. Interestingly, Ian Bell, seemed pretty upbeat, didn't he, in that press conference? He said, we're hoping that one of Chandimal and Kamindu can go on in the morning. Clearly, Sri Lanka are still up for this. The pitch is up and down. It's probably going to take spin on day 4 and 5. The outfield is slow, so runs are at a premium. If there's some way that Sri Lanka can add another 100, which is going to be a really tall order, there's a bit of rain forecast. They might just feel that they've got a glimmer of hope. But how much better could it have been had they not put themselves under real pressure?
I have seen enough from this side to believe that, look, the most likely scenario is they lose this test, right? That is by far and away the most likely thing to happen here. But I've seen enough of this side to think they quite easily could beat this team as in England at Lords and at the Oval. I think the weather's going to be a lot better. We're going to talk about the weather because I see the question about the weather come through shortly. I think it's going to be a lot warmer in those places. Sri Lankans are fair weather players. That isn't a slur. That's just the environment that they come from, right? It's hot in Sri Lanka. It's generally dry as well. Playing here is quite different to the conditions they would have played in. I don't think they've let themselves down as well. I think you look at their bowling and you go, Asita's a special bowler. Got massively picked up in the press conference yesterday. We talked about it yesterday. Go back and look at it. Prabhath had 2 incredible balls yesterday to get 2 wickets. The batting, kind of, when you're 6 for 3, you just can't even. At that point, I generally was thinking, are we going to get to double figures here? Kind of resurrected ourselves and got into the 200s. And in fact, at the end of it, I actually felt maybe we should have got close to 250 and maybe the tail should have wagged a little bit waggier. And then today, I mean, they lost wickets early again and they still kind of are over 200 by the end of it. I mean, I'm not sure that they can stick about and bat, put an extra 100 runs on tomorrow. I think realistically, if they've got even going to save the test, they need to put on 150 runs tomorrow to get anywhere near that, anywhere near saving it. But the reason we're sports fans, the reason why anyone is ever a sports fan is because you always want the unbelievable to happen, right? We're lucky as Sri Lanka fans, and it might feel like it hasn't happened too often recently, but we've seen our team over the generations do extraordinary things, right? We all remember, I talked about KJP in South Africa, remember the miracle at the MCG, we remember how many times this Sri Lanka has come back from thinking it's all over and it's all done to come back and win stuff. No one ever thinks we're ever the disrespect you hear about our players in and around their stadium is absolutely incredible. The only people who do believe in us is us. We've got to believe in it. There's no point being a fan if you don't, right?
Yeah, but I think it's also fair to say that Sri Lanka have shown a sort of resilience throughout this test that I think a lot of people in England thought was beyond them. I think that they've won a few hearts and minds, and they've produced some really flashes of really compelling cricket throughout the game. A lot of individual performances, and yeah, I think already there's a feeling that this team is stronger than the West Indies team who came here earlier in the summer, and that they might well. The likeliest outcome is that they'll come here tomorrow and lose the test. But I think they've shown enough to kind of change the narrative around this series, and they're not a million miles away from putting it together. And who knows what's going to happen through the second and third test.
Exactly right. Should we take our questions and then we've got to go because we've got a lot of rain dancing to do tonight. Gamer has messaged in, when you consider players only experience that temperature, not even a month for a year, I can understand a lack of intensity in the morning session. It's quite hard on body to adapt to temps. It's always 15 degrees Celsius lower than average in SL. I think that's a fair comment. Also, you see that when they're fielded, they've got their hands in their pockets. That is mainly because they have hand warmers in their pockets as well. I think hand warmers are quite a controversial topic in cricket. If I was a coach, I would encourage the use of them. But I think Gamer makes a fair point in terms of it's difficult conditions for our team to play in. They're not used to playing in this. And actually, maybe New Zealand and obviously in Ireland as well gets quite cold, but nowhere else in the kind of world.
No, it is worth saying that it is really cold here.
Yeah.
But
it's cold for us. We live here.
Yeah. But that doesn't excuse coming out with a fielder not having his shin pads on, Angelo being at mid-wicket when you know that's going to be a high-traffic area, allowing singles to deep point, not knowing what end the bowlers are going to bowl from, not looking like they've got plans, or even trying to get Jamie Smith out, happy to just, give him singles so they can bowl at the tail. I think it was sloppy this morning, whichever way you slice it. Certainly, these aren't conditions that they're used to, and you've got to give them a bit of leeway there. But I think Sri Lanka do need to take a look at themselves. And, I think they could have approached this morning a bit better, and that they did let themselves down a little bit in that session.
It really felt this morning that their main thing they were bringing to this table was vibes. And just kind of go, we're going to turn up, we're going to be happy, we're going to be jolly Sri Lankans. And that'd be enough to kind of skittle this English tail out, and it absolutely wasn't. And they kind of let them in, or at least gave them kind of 50 more runs than they needed to, right? And that's where I think they could have. There's, temperature aside, they definitely could have tightened things up, I think, quite a lot. Shane Pierce has asked, Essendon's playing against 13, very poor umpire, not so much on the ask. That is a statement. I think we talked about this slightly earlier, right? When we talked about managing the umpires. I'm not sure SL do that particularly well. I don't think England do it particularly well, but I think England do it slightly better. So I think it looks... So when I say that don't do it particularly well, I mean, I don't think England get all the calls they want, but I think it kind of makes them feel... It makes... When they do get the big calls, like the new ball, I think it makes it feel like they are doing much better than we are. So I think they need to have a strategy for how to do it, basically, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the ball change is going to be the controversial one, but the seam did look out of shape, and I think, as I said, the issue is around the rules and making sure that a ball replacement is more like the one that is being replaced in the first place. I think Chris Gaffney had a couple of bad LBW decisions late in the day, but they were both overturned. And to be fair, from where we were sitting live, they did both look out. I'd like to see Dimmoth's one again. I'll be searching out a replay tonight. But yeah, I think the umpires maybe haven't had the best day today, but I think, again, Sri Lanka have to look at themselves more than the officiating, in my opinion.
I also think a lot of what we're talking about stems back to they just haven't played Test cricket in ages. So, I mean, what you're going to do is sit about in New York where you're preparing to face Bangladesh or South Africa and go, right, lads, 3 months' time we're playing England.
No, it's really hard. I was struck today by the fact they haven't played a 3-match series since 2018. I mean, that's just remarkable.
So I think that England are a Test team and they play a lot of Test cricket, and a lot of the things we're talking about, strategy for managing umpires, turning up on the third day and trying to get wickets in the morning, that's part of the machinery they've got in place that we don't have, because it's just the first time we've done a 3-match series in 6 years.
6 years.
Incredible. Trump has asked, do you reckon DDS should maybe bat higher up the order, like 3 or 4? You can clearly deal with the pressure situations. I'll be honest, I don't think it really matters at the moment. If they're basically all our recognised batters seem to turn up within the first 10 overs, so they might as well just draw where they bat out the hat at the moment. So
yeah, well, I'd be reluctant to change one of the few things that seems to be working. DDS has been, outstanding at 6. I think Sri Lanka have tried him at 3 in Test cricket before, and it hasn't been a resounding success. I think Patham will come into that top 3 and hopefully add a bit more stability. Whether Sadira comes in somewhere as well, we'll see.
Gamer's just chipped in. It's worth mentioning Kamindu, 550 plus scores in 4 matches with 2 centuries. Absolutely. And he looked $1 million today. I don't know what commentaries people were hearing around the world. I don't know which teams were doing it. But Stuart Broad was talking about, and Nasser and Michael Athen were all talking about how good he looked. And Stuart Broad, obviously, an England legend and relatively recently retired, was talking about how it might take a little while for bowlers to figure out how to bowl to him, just because he seems to be quite a complete player.
Very, very fluid and impressive temperament as well. Coming out in that sort of pressure situation, to still have the confidence to play the shots the way that he did. He took on the short ball, didn't he, quite a bit early on, and rode his luck a little bit, and then just grew into his innings. Looked fantastic. Hope that him and Chandimal can mount a little partnership in the morning.
I mentioned something at the end of play today about his stats, but I won't mention, because if I do, it won't happen. But if he can mount a partnership, it would be incredible for his stats. There's a couple of questions came in on Twitter as well. Soppen said, why does Crystal always play number 3? Don't we have good enough batters? Kusal Mendes. We should do a whole show about him at some point and his batting. Actually, I think the show is mainly about how people feel about him, right? Because I think clearly he is a talented cricketer and a talented batter. I, for whatever reason, definitely in red ball cricket. I'm not so sure it's as true in white ball cricket anymore. But in red ball cricket, we're not getting the best out of him. What's going wrong with it, Nick? And how do we fix it?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, Mark. It's a difficult one to answer. Such a talented player. Whether number 3 is the right position for him, it's where he's batted pretty much all of his career for Sri Lanka, right? I'm not sure, especially in these kind of conditions, and it's number 3 at the moment is almost like being an opener with the way that Nishan Madushka's been getting out early. He had a really long bat in the nets the day before the test started and looked a bit scratchy. Then he was fluid in the first innings and got an early one here. It's typical mercurial Kusal Mendis. I think if he's going to stay in the side through this series, he might be better off batting lower down where he's a bit more protected. I think maybe there are some questions to ask about his long-term future in red ball cricket. I mean, if you take away that Island series last year, I think he's averaging just under 25 since the start of 2023. So clearly it hasn't been the best stretch for him. Bit of a worry for Sri Lanka, yeah.
Gamer's just written in saying Kusal might benefit from a little break to get his mind clear, at least red ball. I think the problem is that the breaks in red ball are too long and that he ends up playing so much white ball cricket in between it. It's so difficult to... That ball that he got out to today, I just don't see him getting out to that in white ball cricket anymore. Like, when he gets bowled into those areas. I mean, you could say it's English conditions, but in a way, if he's got to play the rest of the series, for whatever reason, if he does get dropped, I'd be kind of tempted to just do what you do in T20s. Just like stick him to open, drop Madushka down, or bring in Patam at 3 or whatever. Open with Demuth and be like, just go through, just go full white ball Kusal. Like, just do it. I mean, you're not scoring runs now. Why not try something new? But I don't know. Maybe Sanath and Ian Bell and other people have a strategy. We did talk about a lot of this earlier on in the show as well. We talked about whether or not he moves down the order, because I think that might be another interesting thing that they end up doing. We won't revisit that, but we'll let you rewind because we're going to stop this show soon. I think we've answered all the questions. Someone did. Kassun asked, when he hears Rashid talking about the ball change and Chris Gaffney, we've laid into Chris Gaffney. Well, actually, there's no point us laying into Chris Gaffney. We're all angry about the whole situation. I think there is a lesson to learn there. We've explained this already. Manage the umpires better. Get the red ball changed.
And I think Chris Gaffney knows that he didn't have the best day. Paul Rifle was on the losing side in the final in 1996, so I'll let you make up your own mind about what's going on there. I'm joking. Paul Rifle seems like a very nice guy.
Yeah, I don't think Chris Gaffney is going to be going to any all-inclusives in Sri Lanka anytime soon. Guys, we'll leave it there. We'll wrap it all up. We've been the Murali End. Thank you for watching, listening, whatever way you're interacting with this. We'll be back tomorrow, whatever that end of the day or whatever happens tomorrow. We'll be back at some stage talking to you guys about it. So do send us your questions. Hit the subscribe, the follow, join the WhatsApp group, and we'll see you at the Three Falcons after the end of the first day's play at Lords. Thanks for watching. See you all later. Bye.